Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something kinda dark, but honestly, incredibly fascinating. We're looking at a piece of source material from an Arabic series called The Ancient Enemy of Mankind. We're going to put on our investigator hats today and neutrally map out this very specific historical and theological framework the creator presents. It's called the Horned Deity Theory. Basically, the source claims that humanity has been dealing with this ancient, unseen enemy, and its one and only goal? Our total destruction. So let's jump right in and look closely at the claims and the evidence they've laid out for us.
To unpack this pretty heavy theoretical dossier piece by piece, here's our game plan. First, we'll define the deity's goal, then we'll uncover the traitorous pact, examine the tactics of division, look at the ancient kings involved, and finally, review the theological evidence.
All right, starting with part one, the deity's ultimate goal. Before we can really grasp the tactics this ancient entity uses, we absolutely have to understand its core, dark motivation.
So what is it? The source material defines this horned deity essentially as a god of war. But here's the kicker. Its primary objective isn't just conquest. No, it's the complete and utter annihilation of all human populations. It completely ignores religion or nationality. It's just this blanket, universal hatred for us. But the source posits a really crucial caveat here. It claims that this entity's actual literal power is inherently weak. Because of this fundamental weakness, it can't just wipe out humanity on its own. It is absolutely forced to rely on external, earthly help to achieve this apocalyptic goal.
Which leads us to part two, the traitorous human pact. Because if you're an inherently weak entity, how do you actually achieve global destruction? Let's examine how the source claims this entity overcomes its limitations. It basically comes down to a really dark transactional pact. On one hand, the entity offers worldly power, promising direct aid to kings and rulers to help them defeat and crush their earthly enemies. But on the other hand, there's a terrifying cost, the human offering. To get this power, human leaders actually betray their own kind. The source says they do this through shedding blood, performing human sacrifice, and orchestrating mass deception. It's this incredibly dark quid pro quo, where humanity is literally sold out by its own leaders just for personal gain.
Okay, moving to part three, tactics of global division. You might be wondering, how exactly is all this mass deception and bloodshed executed on a global scale? Day to day.
Well, the theory gets very specific here, outlining three distinct psychological warfare tactics. First up, planting eternal enmity and hatred among people. Second, misleading humans away from the straight path, basically fracturing them into polytheism or multiple different beliefs. And third, even within a single religion, dividing people into warring, hostile sects. So the crucial takeaway here is that according to this source, human conflict, sectarianism, and just everyday hatred aren't just natural human flaws. They are framed as a deliberately orchestrated demonic plot, specifically designed to tear us apart from the inside out.
But we really have to remember the end game here. Misleading humanity is not the final goal. The source draws this absolutely crucial distinction. All of this deception, all the divided sects, the cultivated hatred, it's merely a stepping stone. It's just a tool. The true, terrifying stakes of the creator's theory remain the complete extermination of the human race. The division is simply how the entity weakens our defenses so that extermination actually becomes possible.
So, who specifically was executing these pacts back in the day? That brings us to part four, ancient kings and dark magic. And I want to point out, the source material is incredibly literal here. The creator argues that ancient civilizations were ruled by kings and priests who literally, and I mean literally, not just metaphorically as some symbol of evil, they worshipped Iblis, or Satan, through the active use of black magic. The claim here is that demonic communication was a genuine historical practice. It was utilized by the ancient elite to maintain this iron grip on power and to crush their geopolitical rivals.
And the consequences of this dark magic are brutal. The bloody cost of this pact, as claimed by the source, includes orchestrated massive wars, large-scale human sacrifices, and the maximum possible massacres of the human race. Basically, the source is suggesting that the bloodiest, most horrific parts of human history weren't just, tragic accidents. They were the direct fulfillment of this traitorous pact, with ancient rulers paying their dues to this dark entity.
Now this brings us to a really critical question. We've seen the historical theory, we've seen the supposed psychological tactics, but how does the source actually anchor these immense historical and mythological claims theologically? Like, what's the actual foundation for this entire framework? Let's pivot the explainer from historical theory for a second and look at the scriptural foundation provided at the end of the source material.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5, Theological Evidence Presented. This is where we're going to examine the specific verses the Creator uses to validate his thesis about the horned deity.
The source cites this specific scripture to anchor its claims. It says, "And incite whoever you can among them with your voice, and assault them with your cavalry and infantry, and become a partner in their wealth and their children, and promise them. But Satan does not promise them except delusion." Now, the crucial point here is that this verse represents the entity's commanded tactics. It explicitly outlines this assault on humanity, the infiltration into human affairs, and of course, the false promises used to lure humans into that traitorous pact we explored just a bit earlier.
Further building this case, the source brings in another quote. "Do you not see that we have sent the devils upon the disbelievers, inciting them to evil with constant incitement?" The Creator uses this verse to illustrate the constant, driving force of demonic influence over those who stray. It paints this really vivid picture of an active, relentless psychological warfare, and that matches up exactly with the tactics of global division we saw just a moment ago.
Moving to the third verse, it states, "And whoever takes Satan as an ally instead of a law has certainly sustained a clear loss." Notice how expertly this links right back to the traitorous human pact. The alliance mentioned in this verse is framed by the Creator as the exact transactional deal struck by those ancient kings. They're trading their humanity and ultimate salvation for temporary earthly power, which results in, as the verse says, a profound and clear loss.
The scriptural evidence then wraps up with this summarizing verse. "Indeed, Satan is an enemy to you, so take him as an enemy. He only invites his party to be among the companions of the blaze." This really reinforces the foundational claim of this whole explainer. The relationship is one of eternal enmity. There is absolutely no room for true alliance here, only ultimate destruction.
So, the source argues forcefully that the ancient enemy's ultimate goal remains total human annihilation through division and deception. And the big question it leaves us with is this: will humanity continue to fall for the same ancient tactics? Whether you're viewing this through a historical, theological, or honestly even purely psychological lens, the concepts of division and betrayal remain deeply relevant to the human condition. Thank you so much for joining me on this structured dive into the source material. Until next time, keep analyzing, keep questioning, and keep learning.